Okay, well, good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock, and see some people popping in and popping out. Hopefully, we'll get a few more people coming in here as time goes on, but usually in the first 5 minutes or so, we get more people coming in. If anyone can hear me okay, I appreciate maybe a comment or something left to me just to make sure that you're hearing the audio okay. If someone
I
can
hear
just,
you.
okay, great. Thank you so much. All right. So with that, I think I'm going to, thank you, appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So let me go ahead and share my PowerPoint, and then we'll get things kicked off. And if people kind of come in or come and go, that's fine. But I don't want to delay things too long here for those who've shown up on time. So tonight's little talk, oops, let me go back. Tonight's talk is kind of a lot of different things. This is kind of just a fun one I put together. It covers a lot of different topics. What my hope was really was to kind of go over tips and tricks and things that I use for weight management myself and things that I know are helpful to patients. So what you're getting with this video is not just, some information from a dietitian or, from someone in public health, but it's also from someone who has gone through this weight loss journey himself. And I think that's important because I have a different perspective maybe than some others might. So just to give you a quick background, I lost 115 pounds. That was almost 10 years ago now, about 8 years ago. Struggled with weight off and on most of my life. I'm 48 now, but since I was a teenager, basically, it's been a battle up and down. I've been obese. I've been on blood pressure medications, been on cholesterol medications. Got to where I couldn't do a whole lot of physical activity. It just got to be a real strain. And so I've been through all that, and it's an ongoing situation. Anyone who gets a really high level of weight like that, even if you lose most or all of it or whatever, anyone knows that has gone through that it's a lifelong pursuit. You don't just reach that end point and then everything's great and people sing songs. It's not like that. There's no rainbow at the end and you're done. It's an ongoing thing. It just transitions from a weight loss to a weight maintenance. So what I'm hoping to do tonight is share with you things that have helped me keep the vast majority of that big weight loss off. There have been ups and downs. I have had little regains. I've had, losses again, up and so on. But these are strategies that I have employed for myself. I continue to employ to help me to keep that weight off. So that's a big part of it. And the other part of it is I want to go through some food safety, food labels, things of that nature that, maybe we don't think about that much when we're in the kitchen. That kind of goes into my dietitian training. We're all taught in school, about food safety, safe food handling techniques, and just understanding food labels, at least on a basic level, I think is very important, especially for using tracking tools, trying to follow our sodium, looking at sugar, all these different things. It's important to kind of be able to sort out what you're looking at on these labels. So as with all of my classes, you'll be getting some materials emailed to you after the class that support what I talked about here. So, feel free to take notes if you want to, but if you feel like you missed something, it should be in some of those handouts that will be mailed to you, emailed to you. Most of it is going to be on there. And as always, there's contact information also in those materials. You can reach out, email me. I believe my phone number is also included in that. If there's some follow-up questions, I always encourage people to do that. So without further ado, so my name again is Bert Herald. I don't even know if I introduced myself, but my name is Bert Herald. I'm a dietitian at Carilion Clinic. And I've been doing a lot of these classes now for this is almost 2 years now. I've been doing these here at Carilion. And used to be in person. Now they're all kind of WebEx based with COVID. Hopefully sometime in not too distant future, we will transition back to in person, but I think for now it's going to be WebEx. So just to kind of kick things off, with this talk. I think, the big picture with all this, with weight management, weight loss, trying to get to or keep a healthy weight, is we want to just be. We don't want to always be on a diet. And unfortunately, this is sort of a problem, I guess, with this field, weight management, because oftentimes, if we work with patients, we tell them, you reached your goal weight, or you reached your target here. If we just tell them you're good, don't worry about tracking, don't worry about measuring, business as usual, they will regain, almost certainly. Most weight loss programs, almost all weight loss programs, people will see a regain. It's just a question of how much and how fast. So to just sort of not think about what, not have to track, not have to measure, that would be amazing. Do I think it's realistic? I would say maybe not completely. I think there's a middle ground. I don't think it's all or nothing. I don't think, you have to necessarily be tracking every meal for the rest of your life, or weighing yourself every single day the rest of your life. But I do think we need to kind of think about a new normal with obesity, especially. The goal to just be is there. We want to just sort of live our life and not, quote unquote, obsess. But I think we have to redefine what it means to live our life. Just as, a diabetic maybe has to, have habits where they're measuring blood sugar, things of that nature. We have to, as formerly obese or obese people, we have to sort of have different habits. And I think that's just how that is. That's how we kind of just be, I guess. But there's a good article in the New York Times about some of this. It's kind of dated now, 2011, but called The Fat Trap. If you just Google Fat Trap, if you're interested, it's a really good article. And I think even though it's a bit dated now, most of what's in there is still very, very applicable. Another little thing I like to include in my talks is kind of self-worth. A lot of patients that I see, with weight management, maybe there's an issue kind of in the background with kind of self-esteem, self-worth. And where that shows up is we will use food to comfort ourselves when we have a lot of stress. And sometimes we use it, there's different reasons why people sometimes will overeat, but I would say one of the biggest reasons is stress management. Food is, and you could almost think of it almost like alcohol. I mean, food is comforting, particularly carbohydrates are very comforting, and it's the reason why they call them comfort foods. They can provide comfort to us. It's a calming effect. It's a known effect in our brain with neurotransmitters like serotonin. So the self-worth comes in where we have to kick in our mind like, hey, I'm not just a receptacle for food and for snacks to make me feel good. Like, this is impacting my health. This is impacting my body. This in turn will impact, my longevity, which can impact those around me, those who love me, my friends, my family. So we have to kind of have that in the back of our mind, like, we matter. We're not just a dumpster for food. We have to see ourselves as important, and our health goals are very important, and they need to be prioritized. It's very important to have our regular exercise. It's very important to eat fruits and vegetables and to try to get in whole grains. And, all that stuff matters, and it's important. And when we just look for food as a way to comfort ourselves from bad things that are happening, we're kind of in a way saying, you know what, my health doesn't really matter. I don't really matter. Let's just have some fun and have this food and feel better. And that's something we all got to fight, I think. And I think, even as a practitioner, even in my own life, I've seen instances like that. I think everyone has. It's not a mark against anybody, but it's something to just keep in mind. So here's kind of a brief outline. So we're going to talk about many different tools for meal prep. Again, understanding food labels, and we're going to talk a bit about food safety. So food scales, as you can see this little picture, food scales come in a lot of different sizes and shapes and features. And in today's world, we have a lot of computer chips. Everything has got a computer in it, as we all know. And so more and more features are being added all the time. I don't know that I'm necessarily up on the most amazing food scale there is, but I can definitely show you the one that I use here later. So we're going to kind of do a show and tell at the end. I'm going to go through a lot of the tools that I personally use because frankly, I think that's the best way to convey this message is, you know, see someone who's walking the walk, what I do, versus just lecturing, you know, on some theory. So, but speaking of theory, so food scales are very helpful with tracking, obviously. So you can see there a lot of different containers, different foods, different types of foods, you know, kind of dry goods or berries, meats, all kinds of things you can weigh on these food scales. They are more precise measurement than using like a volume measurement like cups and spoons. You can get the grams and the ounces and everything very precisely with this. If you ever watch some of these baking shows, like my wife really likes this one that's BBC. I can't even think of the name of it now, but the British baking show, I think. They usually will measure their flours in grams. They'll measure instead of using cups. And that's because it's a more accurate way to measure things. So features you want to look for if you're going to go out and buy a food scale. First, I'd tell you is don't be concerned that it's going to, you know, kill the bank account. These are usually pretty inexpensive things, so you don't need to buy a $100 food scale. You know, I'm thinking it's more along the lines of $10 to $20 typically. So you want to look for one that's easy to use. You know, sometimes these features get carried away, so you want something that you can tell right away. It's like what the buttons do and what it's supposed to be doing. Easy to read. Some of these have numbers that I can't really read. And so that's an issue. If you can actually physically go to a store and look at them, of course, I think that's the best way. Online, sometimes it's a little harder to tell what you're getting with these things. All of them need to have an ability to tare, and I think really all these scales do. Maybe if you get a really old one or something, it might not. What the tare is a way to zero out the scale. So when you put a measure, like you put a bowl, like they have a bowl of mixed nuts or something on there, you want to tare the bowl first. So that sets the scale to 0 with that bowl on there. And then you just pour the nuts in there, and it'll measure how much the nuts weigh. It won't be measuring how much the bowl weighs. So that's just sort of scale 101 kind of thing. If you've never used a food scale before, that might be kind of a new thing for you, but a pretty simple thing. And again, you want to be able to read out in ounces and or pounds because of these recipes that we use. I'm sorry, it shouldn't be ounces or pounds. It should be grams, grams or ounces or pounds. I have a typo on the slide. So you want metric and you want English units. So metric is grams, English is ounces. So you want to have both of those. Again, I think most modern food scales will have both. Before we move on here, and I guess I don't know if I've really mentioned why we use the food scales, but so the biggest issue really with food scales, it's not just for accuracy in cooking, but it's really helpful for weight loss. So when you're using tracking software, you're tracking your calories, which is what I do with most of my patients. We work with them to track what they're eating. You need a way to measure a lot of times, how much you're getting. And food scale is really, really helpful with that. Like they say, things with like peanuts or nuts and seeds, just different things, like I said, flours for cooking, occasionally if you have a snack food, maybe chocolate, something like that, you want to measure it out. You want to make sure that you're not getting too much of whatever it is. For me personally, I use it a lot for cereals, I would say. I would say nuts and seeds and cereals are kind of the big things that, for me, in terms of weight management, so I know how much I'm getting. Sometimes I'll measure a piece of cheese on there or something, make sure it's not too big. We'll talk about portions too, and portion control and knowing portion sizes will help you also to kind of roughly sort of track how much you're getting as well. Measurements. So this may go without saying for most people, but again, when I say that, there's always people that I run into that they really don't cook at all. And that's okay. I mean, some people come from a background where they cooked a lot growing up or whatever, and some people have never cooked. So it's important if you're starting out and you're doing some cooking, to have some good measuring cups and spoons on hand. Different sizes, usually get a set, and they're clearly labeled what they are. I find even sometimes having 2 sets on hand is convenient. They're really, really cheap. So that's just something we should all try to have. In terms of sort of eyeballing portions, you can certainly do that. And this is something I work with patients on as well, to give them an idea, just rough ideas. So if you're at a buffet somewhere, you don't have a food scale you're going to whip out of your pocket and say, you know, how many grams is this? So you're trying to figure out, roughly speaking, how many portions, how much am I getting? You know, so a cup is about the size of your fist typically, or you can think of it as the size of a baseball, because our fists are all different sizes. So if you have a baseball-sized fist, that is a cup volume. And so a lot of times when I counsel patients, I'll talk about, you know, half a cup of cereal is a portion, or, you know, a cup of chopped vegetables or chopped fruit, that is a portion. On your plate, you want to have 2 servings, you know, fruits and or vegetables. Each one is a cup. So you can think of that really quick and easy. If I'm at a buffet and I want to make sure I'm getting my fruits and vegetables like my dietitian wants, make sure you have a fist size of fruits and a fist size of vegetables on the plate, and you're good. You've actually met your goals for fiber and for nutrients, and you're good. So that is really convenient, I think. I use that myself when I'm looking at my own plates. The thumb is another good one. That's about an ounce of cheese or meat. So if you're just slicing off some cheese, you want to have cheese and crackers as a snack or something. You want to limit your calories. Usually an ounce of cheese you can think is around 100 to 150 calories. It varies a little bit by the type of cheese, but so generally that's about 100. And you can just estimate that by, you know, is about the size of my thumb. So that's really convenient. We all have a thumb. We may not have a baseball, but we all have thumbs, we all have fists typically, so we can use those to kind of, you know, figure out these portions. So 3 ounces of meat is about the size of the palm of your hand. I like to use the analogy of a deck of cards. I don't know if I have that on here. Yes, or deck of cards. There's the baseball. So either way, you know, if you're not a card player and you don't really think, well, what's the size of the deck of cards? I mean, just think of the palm of your hand. So typically speaking, you know, for those who do eat meat, you know, usually about 2 servings of that size in a day will meet your, you know, your protein goals, as long as you're sort of eating a balanced diet that includes dairy and whole grains and everything. You will meet your protein goals. Typically, most people with, you know, 2, maybe sometimes 3 servings of that size, depends on the person, obviously, but typically somewhere around 2 of those. So that's a good way to kind of think, you know, am I meeting my protein goals? You know, do I really not eat any meat? Not because I'm vegetarian or vegan, but just because, you know, maybe I'm just not working it into my diet. Maybe I'm not getting enough protein. Well, you know, if you only have 1 deck of carbs or less, you know, that could be. So, so that's some good ideas there. Choosemyplate. So this is a website called Choosemyplate.gov. It's sort of the USDA government website that lays out nutrition guidelines. They have a model which is really helpful called My Plate. It's a model that's used in a lot of schools. I use it with my patients as well. It's a very easy way to think about a balanced diet approach. So you have kind of half of your plate with fruits and vegetables, the other half kind of split between whole grains, mostly whole grains, and lean protein. And then you have that little dairy, kind of looks like a glass of milk up there. So you can buy these. I mean, if you want them on hand in your kitchen, I've had actually several patients ask about buying them. You can go online and get them. I mean, My Plate or, you know, USDA doesn't really sell them directly, I don't think. I've never seen them do that, but you can actually get versions of this on Amazon. I've seen they're not too expensive. I've got a couple of them around the house just for reference or just, you know, for fun or to show, you know, sometimes I have a couple of them, you know, at work to show patients, stuff like that. So that's another thing to consider. This is just a what they call the checklist. This is another resource from the USDA. It kind of explains the My Plate kind of balanced diet concept and how many portions of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, protein, and dairy you should have in your diet. And this one's for a 2,000 calorie diet. So they have different checklists for different calorie levels. 2,000 is kind of the generic calorie level. So when you look on a food label, any food label, it's based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So when it tells you how much vitamin C you're getting with that can of beans or whatever, that's based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So I might say 10%, and we'll get into that here in a second with food labels. That means you're eating 10% vitamin C for a 2,000 calorie diet. So 2,000 is a pretty standard measurement. And so this is something I'll usually work with my patients on as far as, showing them what a healthy kind of diet looks like broken down into food groups. And they have little additional criteria there as far as limiting your sodium, limiting your saturated fat, and limiting your added sugars. And honestly, those three things are kind of what distinguishes healthy recipes from just generic recipes you might get online somewhere. Dietitians will go to great lengths to ensure that when they put together recipes or help to edit a cookbook or whatever, that those recipes meet those guidelines for a healthy diet. So it's not going to be loaded with sugar, it's not going to be loaded with saturated fat, it's not going to be really high in sodium, salt. You can pretty much guarantee that with all these healthy cookbooks, and certainly the ones that I recommend are going to meet that. So there's that resource. And again, this stuff is going to be emailed to you after the class, so don't worry about trying to find it or whatever. You'll get that on an email as well. So this is kind of moving into managing weight management. And kind of a very important technique is that I found over the years, and is leftovers and portion control. Both of those really kind of are very important, and I said crucial here. So if you don't have them already, I think all of us have these to some degree. I will tell you though, before I really got serious, really buckled down and saw this as a lifestyle, I did not really have a lot of these containers. I had a few here and there, but I now have a cabinet full, actually a couple of cabinets full of different size containers, different types of containers for different things. And this allows me to, when I make a meal, I choose a meal day, it's usually Sunday for me. I'll make up a big meal, I'll have a lot of leftovers, and I can divvy those leftovers into these containers. I know how many calories they have. So when I come home from work or whatever, I can pop this in the microwave, heat it up, and I'm good to go. I know what I've got. It's easy to record. It really, really makes these weight loss programs possible, I think, more practical, easier to do. So this is kind of a tool of the trade. There's different ones out there. So Pyrex, I'm not working for Pyrex. There's Anchor Hawking. I'm sure there's a few other brands. But these are glass. This particular example is some glass storage. I like glass myself. I don't have kids. If you have kids, this might be a no-go for you. But with glass, it's really nice for either refrigerator or freezer. It cleans well. And the big thing with glass is it doesn't hold on to odors. Pyrex also used to be known for what they call borosilicate glass, which is a special kind of glass where you can transfer boiling hot liquids directly into it and it won't suddenly crack or explode like cheap glass will. I understand they have changed the chemistry of some of the Pyrex glasses. It's a little more complicated. I don't know if they're still that great that way. I typically don't push my luck with that. I will pour stuff in there after it's cooled off because I don't know what I'm dealing with these Pyrexes or whatever. But just a little chemistry there for you to throw in. There's different sizes, different shapes. Again, really, really great for cleaning and not holding on to odors. Again, not great for kids or really for packed meals. I have taken those with me, but they're heavy and kind of awkward, probably a kind of a breakage hazard. Plastic, of course, there's all these different colors. We all know about plastic storage. It's probably been around since, I don't know what, the 50s or whatever, maybe even the 40s. Used to be Tupperware was the big name for plastic storage of all shapes and sizes. And now, of course, there's just millions of different brands, I guess, out there. I have a wide variety, kind of like this picture. I have different colors, shapes, sizes. Really great for eating lunch out somewhere, and just even for refrigerating, freezing. Good for kids, obviously, as well. Now, may hold on to odors. Some of them are worse than others. And dishwasher, you got to watch out for. A lot of these will warp, which is another thing I love about Pyrex. You can just blast that thing in the dishwasher. You don't have to worry about it. That's kind of the basic idea. The big picture is, if you don't have those, you're doing a weight management program, I would highly recommend getting a variety of different things to help you with all this. Okay, so the slow cooker, if you're like me in the last 3 or 4 years, either somebody has gifted you one of these things or you went out and bought one because it's just all the rage right now, the Instant Pot. I ended up getting one. My sister sent me one as a gift. I already had a slow cooker, but she was really excited about the Instant Pot because it has the pressure cooker in it as well. I do like slow cookers. I don't really do pressure cooking that much. I don't have anything against it. Certainly it's fine to do. I'm just sort of, I guess, lazy. I don't want to try to figure that out and deal with that, so I don't really do it. But more power to you if you want to do the pressure cooking, that's certainly fine. So some advantages of something like this, set it and forget it. You just kind of set it up. Some people set these up at night, go to bed, in the morning they got a meal ready. Or most people, I think, will do it in the morning and then go to work, come back, and they've got dinner ready. So that's really handy, obviously. With something like this, as far as nutrition goes, I get asked this question a lot. So I try to bring it up tonight, is if nutrients are retained in the broth when you cook with something like this. So sometimes people worry when they cook, they're losing all the nutrition. Well, something like this, it's all kept in there. It's kind of like a soup, so you're not losing anything. You're going to have all the vitamins and minerals from that food in there, so you're good that way. So that's kind of a good thing. I think these are best for fall and winter. I think most people would probably agree. Summer months when it's in the 90s like we had in July and it's just muggy as all get out, you feel like you're in the Caribbean, and you're just sweating indoors or out. I don't know that I would do a lot of these, honestly. It's up to you, I suppose, but I think this is really a cold weather. Even through the spring is pretty good, but I think summer, I don't really use it. And again, pressure cooker reduces time. The other great thing about this is, like I said earlier, is you can make a big quantity, and if you have a family to feed, that's very, very helpful. To have a huge quantity, you have a lot of leftovers for the whole family, not just for yourself. For myself, it's great because I can make a lot of leftovers and it's got a big volume. So I could pretty much feed myself for 4 or 5 days on this thing if I don't get sick of the leftover by then. But, for a single person, or even husband, wife, whatever, you can get quite a few leftovers with that. So that's really, really helpful. Again, the more you can do ahead, the more you have leftovers, the easier it is to stay on these programs, honestly. If you have to cook something new every day, a lot of times people fall off the wagon. It's just hard to maintain that and track it and everything. So, so I already hammered that home. So now we're kind of moving into food labels. So again, there are really, really nice handouts on this that'll go into far more depth than what I'm going to cover tonight. But most of the key features I think are pretty apparent. Some of the finer details, you might look at some of the handouts later. These labels get shifted around every few years. They kind of change, what font they use, which nutrients they highlight, etc. This one is the latest and greatest. I got it off the FDA webpage. And if you go to the FDA webpage, you can read all about these things. And again, there's handouts on it. But the big thing to keep in mind on these, of course, you got calories. Calories are always in bold print here at the top. And their serving size. So it's important to know how much you're talking about here. Usually they'll give volume, and then grams, they'll have English and metric and whatnot. So again, grams, if you have a food scale, you can measure out what the heck that is. Cups a little bit weirder, but again, if you use your fist as a guide or a baseball, you can think, okay, that's 1.5 baseballs. So you've got 2 different ways to kind of figure out what that is when we say 1.5 cups, 280 grams or whatever, 208 grams. The key nutrients that they highlight are kind of in that top block. So you've got fats, you've got cholesterol, sodium, carbohydrate, and protein. So the important things to look at there. So total fat. So fat is sort of like carbohydrates. There's good and bad fats, just like we kind of talk about good and bad carbs. The bad fats is saturated, and so that's one you really want to try to limit. So it'll list the saturated fat grams, and it'll tell you what percentage of a 2,000 calorie diet this thing has for that serving size. So for 1.5 cups, you're getting 8% of your daily recommended total of saturated fat. Saturated fat is something that if you had 0% every day, you'd be fine. Like, you don't need saturated fat in your diet. You need fat for sure. You need the essential fatty acids, but you don't need the saturated fat. It's a type of fat, but it is inherent in most animal foods. It's pretty hard to avoid, and I don't really tell people to avoid it entirely. I don't think that's practical, but you do want to limit it. And so this can kind of help you keep an eye on that. Cholesterol, that one is, it says 5 milligrams, about 2%. So about 300 milligrams is typically what they say is the limit for cholesterol for a daily value. That one is sort of more controversial, whether cholesterol from a food actually raises your blood cholesterol or not. But right now the guidelines say to try to still limit that, just to be on the safe side, about 300 milligrams. So, that's a key nutrient. That's why it's sort of in that top block. These are all kind of key nutrients that most of us are interested in. And sodium is another one. Sodium, we want to keep that limited for heart health and for high blood pressure. So 400 milligrams is not too bad. 430, that's pretty decent with sodium. Low sodium is really considered below 300, but 430 is still pretty moderate. It's not too bad for a portion or something. But you can see it is about 20% of your daily value. So if this is 1/3 of your daily calories, whatever this is, it's only 240 calories. So it's probably not a third, but you got to think in terms of, I'm already at 20%, so I don't want to eat too much more sodium for this meal. So the other things I'm eating better be pretty low in sodium, or I'm going to be pushing my daily limit by the end of the day. So that's where that comes in. Carbohydrates, this is always something that people freak out about now with low carb dieting and so on. With that one, what you kind of want to look at in terms of good carb, bad carb, I would look at the added sugars row. The added sugars is sort of like saturated fat. That's not really something you really need in your diet, but it is in a lot of processed foods. So you want to really kind of limit the added sugars. And fiber is actually a carbohydrate. People don't realize that. Fiber is extremely healthy for you. So you want more fiber, not less. So you want to try to keep that number high. And this, whatever this thing is, 7 grams is a lot of fiber for a serving. So that's pretty whopping. You probably don't need much more fiber than that, if that's your meal. And then protein, 11 grams of protein. Most people, I would say on average, you're probably somewhere for your daily goal for protein between 50 and 80 grams, typically. Some people need to be up more like 100 grams. It scales with your weight. And so, 11 grams is okay. I would say for a typical meal, you probably want to try to hit 20 to 30 grams for most folks for your overall meal. So there you go. It's kind of the key stats there on the food. In terms of tracking and weight management, the calories, of course, are king. That's something you got to make sure you get in and record that, and you're keeping track of that if you're doing tracking with your program, with your weight management. At the bottom, we sort of have a few, we have the vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium. Again, those are daily value percentages and for a 2,000 calorie diet. And those are some key nutrients. And I don't want to dwell on this too long, and we can sort of go into why is vitamin D, calcium, iron, potassium, what do they do, how important they are. I actually want to do a talk on that where I just go into the nutrients, just sort of go through them all, the major ones. I can't really go through them all, and really kind of explain what they're, why do we care about potassium? Why do we care about phosphorus? Why do we care about selenium? There's so many interesting ones. I think that might be a good talk, but that's for another time. So I hope that helps. As far as, another thing to keep in mind with these labels, there's kind of a difference between serving size and portion size. Sometimes people might get that confused. The serving size for this particular item, Cheerios, is 1 cup. But when you're measuring it out, you might, let's say if you want to fill up your bowl for breakfast, you want more than a cup, maybe. You want like 1.5 cups, 2 cups, whatever. So that's your portion size. That's how much you're actually eating. So just keep that in mind. I mean, when you pour something into your bowl, you may not be actually getting that serving size. And that's why we want to use measuring cups. That's why I want to use food scales. So you can see there, the 1 cup is 54 grams. So what I do, I put a bowl on my food scale. I hit the tare button, make sure it's saying 0 grams. Then I'll pour the Cheerios in there, and I know how many grams it is. You just do a little math, and you can figure out how many calories that is. It's not too bad. Or if you use one of these apps like MyFitnessPal, you can just tell it how many grams of Cheerios you ate, and boom, it'll do all the math for you. You don't have to do anything. Just put it in there. So that's really convenient. This is sort of a funny little thing that I discovered when I was in school. I like to pass it along. As far as, well, actually, I'll get to that. That's trans fats. The trans fats is the thing I was going to talk about next, kind of jump to slide. This one here is spray butter. And spray butter, again, tips and tricks for 10 years of weight management. You lose 100 pounds, keeping it off. What do? Get some spray butter. You don't, and of course, everyone's different. Some people don't even care for butter, whatever. I just think this is a good thing to have on hand, though. If you like the taste of butter, you want to have that flavor, but you don't want to get saddled with, 100, 200 calories and tons of saturated fat. Your cardiac doctor is telling you to avoid butter, but you're craving it. This is something where you can put a little spritz of something on your, whatever it is, your whole grain pancake, and it's 0 calories for up to 5 sprays. I did some research. I found 25 sprays is about 20 calories. So for like a 5 spray, they kind of round it down and it's 0. It's not really 0, but it's very, very small. But 25 sprays is a lot of spray butter, and that'll give you a tremendous amount of butter flavor. So little goes a long way. And saturated fat is nil, 0 grams for 5 sprays. And so something to keep in mind. Because people feel deprived when they're trying to reduce calories and they're dieting and whatever. This is a way to not feel as deprived. I just think it's a nice little trick or whatever. So this is the thing I was telling you about I learned in school. There's kind of a labeling, what I feel like is sort of a labeling loophole with trans fat. So I didn't really talk about trans fat, but trans fats, you might know, are kind of the most evil fat there is. So it's worse than saturated fat. It's a fat that comes about largely through manufacturing processes to, give a better mouthfeel to products, longer shelf life, all kinds of different reasons they use it. But we found out that it's really, really bad for heart disease and for arteries and clogging arteries with plaque and whatnot. So we really tell people to make sure you're not getting really any saturated fat. Well, the food labeling guidelines say, if your serving size, however you define your serving size is less than 0.5 gram per serving, 0.5 gram of trans fat per serving, you can say that it's 0 grams of trans fat. Well, it does not mean you have no trans fat in this product. It just means that for that particular serving size, so in this case, it's 2 cookies. And I guess you could make the argument, you shouldn't eat more than 2 cookies at a time anyway. That's another discussion. But let's say you had 4 cookies. You're probably getting some saturated fat. You're getting some saturated fat even with 2 cookies, but it's less than 0.5 gram. So that's something to keep in mind. What you want to look for trans fat on the label, look in the ingredients section, look for the hydrogenated oil. You see that word hydrogenated soybean, hydrogenated cottonseed. That's where you start getting trans fats into the mix. That's how the chemistry works with that. They add hydrogens onto the fat molecule, and you get the hydrogenated fat that's saturated. So just keep that in mind. It's an interesting thing with the food labeling and loopholes. Usually trans fat, honestly, is going to come with their more unhealthy snacks like cookies, pastries, things that most of it, donuts maybe, things that most of us know we shouldn't probably be eating a lot of anyway. So, if you're generally eating pretty healthy, I don't think, you need to panic and worry, I'm getting a lot of trans fat. You're probably not. But that's just something to keep in mind. Another thing that's interesting with food labels, so spices, coffee, foods that really don't have, a lot of nutrition in terms of calories or protein or fat or whatever, they are exempt from the Labeling Act, so there really is no food label on them. So something like the thyme or the paprika, you're not going to see that in the coffee. That doesn't mean that they don't have anything in them. I mean, obviously there are nutrients in these items, but they just don't have to put them on the label. They don't have to have a label. Okay, so we now kind of move into food safety. And again, along with all these other topics that I mentioned, food safety, I have some handouts that will be emailed to you, and there's web links. You can read up on the guidelines on food safety. And as a dietitian, we are trained in food safety. We have to go through what they call Serve Safe certification. If you work in the food service industry as a chef, probably as some other occupations in food service, they are required to get Serve Safe certified. It's a company that actually gives you a certification after you pass an exam. Excuse me just a second. I had to drink something here. Anyway, so I wanted to share some of that, at least give you some of the basics. So I guess the obvious thing, maybe it's not obvious, I don't know, but before you start doing anything in the kitchen with food, you need to wash your hands. So it's kind of like the COVID thing, 20 seconds, seeing Mary Had a Little Lamb, whatever you got to do to get through the 20 seconds, and really scrub around the fingers, the cuticles, just really get that soap worked in there, wash your hands thoroughly, completely. That's something that, you'll find people don't do that. Even health professionals don't always do that. Dietitians don't always do that. I don't always do that. I try to. I think I'm mostly compliant with that. But if somebody calls me out and says, hey, Bert, you didn't wash your hands, it's like, oops, I'll definitely do it. It's something we all got to do. The other thing is safe cooking temperatures, and that's another kind of longer discussion. I'll show you a little chart here in a second. Especially important with meats to make sure that they get cooked to the proper temperature. And storage is very important, how you store things and all that. And safe food prep and techniques. So washing hands, again, sort of already covered this slide. That's 20 seconds. They say, so happy birthday is another one. So yeah, there's a whole procedure and all that. So I think we already sort of covered that, but there it is. As far as washing foods, some people may not think about that, but produce, all produce should be washed prior to cooking and consuming. They sell little fruit and vegetable brushes, I guess. You can scrub them, which might be helpful. According to the FDA official guidelines, USDA, you don't really need to use detergents. I have seen different things as far as, the statement that's for pesticides, for unless you're buying organic, most of them conventionally grown, there is pesticide residue. The thought is, though, that residue is a very, very low level that's not harmful to human health. However, if you want to scrub that off, you would have to use some detergents, but the thought is they're not strictly needed for your health. Meats and poultry should not be washed. So this is something I think is maybe newer to a lot of people. I still see chefs on cooking programs, washing the chicken or turkey or whatever. But strictly speaking, that's not what's supposed to be happening. So you're really just supposed to kind of, prepare the turkey and the chicken without getting in the sink. And one of the reasons why really is, you're kind of spreading germs all over the place when you rinse it like that. And that causes what's called a cross-contamination hazard. And anything else you do in the kitchen, very likely to get contaminated if you rinsed off a raw meat item like that. So it's thought to just, skip that. Eggs do not need to be washed. I guess some people might wash their eggs. Packed produce listed as pre-washed does not need to be washed. This is something I was reading when I was doing this talk, and I was like, So that's what the guidelines say. I typically will still wash a lot of my produce anyway. I'm just sort of extra cautious, but technically speaking, if it's labeled as pre-washed by FDA rules, it's supposed to be clean and washed and safe to eat. As we all know, there's been a lot of stuff in the news about, people coming down with, possibly E. coli, other things from romaine lettuce has been one of the big ones. It seems to always come out of a certain grove somewhere in California. So I don't know. Technically speaking, that's correct. I still wash everything. I don't want to take any chances with something like that, so I wash everything. Safe cooking temperatures. So, again, you don't need to memorize this. There's no quiz at the end or anything. But the number that I tend to keep in mind is poultry, 165. That's the highest of all the different meats. So if you cook your meat to 165, regardless of what it is, you are good to go. I mean, you're killing off the bacteria that could cause you foodborne illness. Seafood and fish, if you cook that to an internal of 145, it's going to be a little overcooked, to be honest. So you probably don't really want to do that, but if you want to be extra super cautious, you could. But it's thought that seafood 145, you're doing the job as far as killing everything. Poultry, again, is more troublesome. You really got to hit the 165 for that. Ground meat is a little higher than fresh meat. So you can see fresh beef, 145. Ground meat's a little dirtier process, basically. So it can incorporate more bacteria, and so they recommend a higher temperature for that. So this is kind of refrigerator management. I borrowed this slide from another dietitian. Actually, I think it was a student that did a talk. I thought it was a really nice little slide, so I just put that in here. So it's good probably to have a thermometer in the refrigerator. I always have one. Make sure that you're at or below 40. So 41 technically is the threshold. You want to be below 41, but at or below 40, you're good there. And you want to sort of think in terms of how to organize things. Think in terms of drippage. You don't want to have raw poultry dripping down and hitting produce and stuff down below it, gravity. So that's really kind of why this is arranged this way. You sort of want to put your raw meats and things at the lower levels and your fresh fruits and vegetables at higher levels. Now, I'll be the first to admit, some of those lower level ones, it's like a crisper drawer. So you toss lettuce in there and stuff. But you do the best you can with these guidelines and try to just think in terms of, if this thing drips, where is it going to go? It's going to go down, and you really don't want to cross-contaminate. So that's where that's coming from. And refrigerator freeze any perishable food within 2 hours. That's the goal. So if you've got a really long road trip from the grocery store, I would recommend taking a cooler with you, maybe a little ice pack, so you don't have to worry about that 2 hours thing just from your drive. You can't have you can definitely have spoilage if it's at like room temp for 2 hours. So safe ways to thaw food. So there's different techniques for thawing food. Usually, what's recommended is the frozen meat. You want to just leave it in the refrigerator. With Thanksgiving coming up, you got these big turkeys, and you got to kind of look up the information on that. Depending upon the weight of the turkey, it can take 2 or 3 days to thaw that thing out. So you have to. It depends on the poundage of it and everything. There are methods of cold water thawing and microwave thawing, and you certainly can always cook without thawing. Results may vary in terms of how well that turns out, but the bottom line is, if you get the internal temperature up to 165, you're good to go. You can cook it when it's frozen. You can put it in there. Again, maybe your outer surfaces get dried out and the inside gets cooked, whatever. There's other things to consider with that. I would go mostly for the refrigerator method personally, if I was going to do that. The cold water method, microwave thawing. You got to be careful with microwave because there's a lot of hot spots and cold spots. It's not even thawing. Again, check the internal temperature and make sure it looks like it's really kind of thawed out. Cold water thawing is sort of more or less a no-no. We don't really tell people to do that as much, just because sometimes it takes a long time. Problem with cold water thawing is, if you just stick it under the faucet and let it go for a couple hours, well, remember back, 2 hours is enough for you to have spoilage. And the problem is some of it's going to be thawed, some of it's not in 2 hours. And so you're going to start growing things on surfaces that are thawed while the internal is still trying to thaw out. So it's just not a good idea, generally speaking, to do that. Safe zones, again, below 40 for cold foods. Hot foods, if you're going to keep them hot, if you have a party, you got people over, it's going to last several hours. You want to try to keep the hot foods above 140 for food safety. So you don't want to just have them out there on the table. Again, 2 hours and you're done. It's like after 2 hours, it's starting to grow stuff and it could be an issue. So really you want to try to keep those above the 140 if you can. Proper work area. This gets into actually making the foods. So clean all surfaces, kind of like washing your hands. Wash your hands first, then clean the surfaces. Make sure everything's clean. Hot soapy water is usually good enough. Unless you've just been, cutting up some raw chicken or something, then it's a whole different story, but we'll get into that in a second. But as far as, just basic cleanliness, you want to do that. If you have been cooking raw chicken, and you've got some concerns about some of these surfaces, it's always a good idea to use some dilute bleach. There's a little recipe there, a tablespoon bleach to 1 gallon of water. Frankly, what I do, I'm sure what most of us do, just get some Clorox cleanup or whatever it's called here. It's Clorox. I got a bottle here on my island here in the kitchen. I'm going to talk about in a second. But you can spray some of that around. You let it sit for about 30 seconds, and the bleach will thoroughly clean, kill all the microorganisms, and you're good to go with that. Separate cutting boards is very important for raw meat versus produce. You don't want to be fast and loose, and I know we see this. I see it. We go out to eat somewhere. You go to Five Guys, and I don't want to beat up on Five Guys, but you go to some random restaurant. You see the guy back there, he's grabbing the raw meat, and then he's grabbing cash register, whatever, and then he's handling, the lettuce. And you're really not supposed to do that. Maybe sometimes people get away with that and you don't get sick. We've got immune systems. Sometimes we're lucky, but really that's not good. So what you want to do is, if you have raw meats, have a separate cutting board, separate knives, process that raw meat, get it cooking or whatever, and then immediately take those raw surfaces and bleach them, clean them thoroughly, make sure they're not touching anything else, wash your hands thoroughly. Once you've done all that, then you can go and chop up the cucumbers or the tomatoes or whatever. But you don't want to sit there with those hands, go back and forth between, your tomatoes and your lettuce and the meats. And it is sort of a pet peeve of mine. I see that in these places, and it drives me a little crazy sometimes. You definitely don't want to do that in your own home. If you have guests over and they all get sick, they're going to be mad at you too. So in a post-COVID world, when we have guests over again, this is something to keep in mind. So wash and sanitize all surfaces in contact with raw meat, poultry, seafood, or eggs. Eggs is another one. Eggs carry salmonella on the shell, which is a bad bacteria. So again, and you don't need to necessarily wash the egg. They don't recommend washing eggs, but just wash your hands thoroughly after handling the raw eggs and any surfaces that they can touch. Alrighty, so I'm going to move into the fun part here. I think it's all fun, but this is a little more fun, I think. So I'm going to turn the camera on here, and let me see here. Hopefully this is showing the video. Can you guys see the tabletop there with the accessories and all that on there? Someone let me know if you're seeing that. Wave a hand, put a thumbs up, something. Seeing it? Good. Okay, great. And I'm over here. It's my hand. I can't really, I can stick my face in it real quick. Hi there. So I'm back here behind the camera. It's kind of hard to juggle all these things. So what I'm going to do, and I'll take some Q&A here at the end, I think, through the chat. So if you guys have questions, maybe just jot them down for now. And then when we get to the end, go ahead and put them on the chat there, and I can certainly answer them. So what I want to do here, and I don't have any way to zoom in, but I want to just walk through some of these things. So let's just start with the measurements. So this is my bathroom scale. This is something I've used for, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years. I don't know how long it's been. This one, what I want to point out, it's pretty old now, so there's newer, more fancy ones. The scales you get now, I believe, have Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or whatever. You can synchronize them to your device, which is kind of cool. One of the features I like about this is got the metal electrodes. So this will measure body fat percentage, which is kind of cool. That's not a parameter that changes very fast with weight loss, but it will gradually change. So you can actually see your fat percentage change over time. Another thing this has, so it's got different memories in here. You can have up to 4 different people on this particular scale. If you have, a family of 4 and everyone's doing different things, you can save your weights on there, and you can actually scroll. There's got little tracking buttons, and I can go back and forth and look at past weights. I'm not going to do it because I don't want you to see my weight, but it's in there. And it's got the date on here. It timestamps it. So those are some nice features for a scale. Being able to see the fat percentage, being able to store things, look at your history, that's kind of nice. And I mean, honestly, for doing weight management, whether you're in maintenance mode, whether you're trying to lose weight, bathroom scale like this is really it's like oxygen. I mean, you just kind of need it, I think. And, most people in this field would say you need to sort of keep track of that. If you want to seriously really keep the weight off, you got to have some idea what's going on with your weight. So I would invest in a nice scale of some sort, and get that going. Next to it is my food scale. This again, probably 10 years old, very heavily used, pretty simple. And I don't know if you can see the display very well on there. Let's see. These cameras may not focus that well, but it's got grams on here, and if I hit the button a second time, it'll go to ounces. So now it says ounces up there. And so all you got to do, again, put your bowl on there. You hit this tare button, it'll go to 0. Pour in your Rice Krispies, and you're good to go. It tells you how many ounces or how many grams. Very, very simple to use. This one has some other features. It's got some kind of stopwatch timer. I never, ever use that. Don't know anything about it. Don't care about that. But as far as measuring out my foods, very, very convenient. And again, I would say it's one of those things. It's almost like the weight, the bathroom scale. I think it's something that, for me, it gets used a lot. I think it's important to have that, and it's very cheap. It's not going to break the bank to get that, so you might as well have it. These are some things that are not I don't know how to say. It's kind of like a tool, but not really. It's just a kitchen thing. But for me, so I eat bananas pretty regularly. If you don't like bananas, maybe you have some other fruit or vegetable that's your thing. But one of the things for me is when I come in the door, I have a banana hook, and I can grab a banana if I want to eat a snack. So maybe I've come home from work, I'm really hungry, I don't have the meal ready right away, I can grab the banana. It's always there, it's front and center. When I come in the door, it's there. I don't have the bag of Chips Ahoy or potato chips right there, but I do have this guy, and I know that it will help satisfy some of that hunger. It'll knock it back, and it's got good nutrition in it. Same thing with this. I have a bowl of fruits. A lot of times I'll put peaches in here or pears. They need to ripen. I have this pretty prominent in my kitchen so that, again, same thing. If I want a snack or something that's there, it's easy. I don't need to scrub or pre-wash. It's already been done. They're clean. They're ready to go. You just grab and eat. So that's a key strategy too. Maybe it's one that people don't think about. But you do have to have those things on hand, because we all have times when we want a snack, we want something quick. And, instead of gravitating towards the things that are bad for us, we have something like that that's just right there. Let me see if I can slide this over. So a couple other items here. Angle that down a little bit, maybe. These are my measuring spoons. Actually, these are my wife's measuring cups. These are some other ones that I bought for helping with patients. These are really cheap. These actually are kind of portable. They pop out. It's like a measuring cup. So, key thing is here, of course, you have different size measuring cups. It's usually quarter, half, 1 cup. Then you've got all these different measuring spoons. I like having them all together. I mean, it's nice to have a little ring kind of thing. Keep everything together. So when you're making a recipe, you're not scouring around trying to find your cups. They're all together as a set. This is something, a little gizmo that I got several years ago for rinsing produce. Or like we talked about before, these, pre-washed things or whatever, or if you're concerned they're not pre-washed. They have bigger ones than this. This is a very small one, but it's very convenient. It's kind of like a colander kind of thing. You can just put I put a lot of berries in this one. So blueberries, strawberries, put them in there, add water, kind of shake that thing up. And you can I usually pour it out like this, or it's got holes in the bottom. You just pop the bottom off and you can let it drain out. And then if you don't eat all the berries, you just put the lid on this thing and stick it in the refrigerator. It's got a little vent on here, kind of keep the moisture controlled. You can get these online. But that's another nice little thing as far as, if you're eating. So, I recommend people eat a lot of fruits and vegetables every day. And it needs to be kind of part of your lifestyle. Part of that is you got to clean them. So you got to have tools that allow you to do that in an efficient manner. And so you got to have something like this. I think some version of that on hand that you can use. This is my Instant Pot back here. So nothing, pretty much like the picture shows. I won't go into the whole operation of the Instant Pot, but it's got this pretty big pot in there. I don't know how much this holds. It says 2/3 something. I don't know. But I get enough in there. I should know the volume. I apologize. I don't have the volume down, but it's a well-known quantity. You can look it up. But, for me, this will, for a single person, this thing will do easily like 6 servings, I would say, maybe even more. It's really, if you fill that thing up, it's really more for a family, I would say. But it's really, really convenient. It's nice to be able to set that and forget it, let it cook, and you've got all these leftovers that you can eat. So it's always in my rotation. Again, certainly in the fall and winter. I have some recipes that I like that I'll just rotate through a lot of times. Sometimes I'll dig up some new ones. And so there's that. And then let me slide it over a little bit further here. So these are some of my personal favorites. You got glass containers over here, different sizes. This actually came from Black Dog Salvage in Roanoke, believe it or not. And these are Pyrexes here. These are the glass ones. This kind of got a little, what do you call it? Trick or treat theme going on here for that. And then this is just your generic Pyrex here. So those are the glass ones. I find that the different sizes are nice to have. Usually for, like I say, if I make something in Instapot, I'm probably using the big one down here. Maybe cheeses or other nuts or seeds or something, I'll put in the small one. These are my plastic ones that I use quite a bit. So this is great for sandwiches. It's like the size of a slice of bread. So you can take that to work or whatever. This is great for maybe some carrot sticks. Again, maybe some peanuts or some snack of some sort you put in there. These are great for various sizes of leftovers, maybe muffins, whatever. So there's all kinds of different sizes. This one's good if you, let's say, had, well, all I can think of is bad foods for this, like hot dogs, but I'm sure there's other things you can use it for as well. So it's kind of a long, skinny shape, flat shape. Sometimes I do pizzas and stuff like that. I can put those in kind of a flat container. So moving on, let's see over here. Let's see here. So a couple things here. So you can see I've got 2 cutting boards here. This is a wooden cutting board. This is it's a wooden cutting board, but it's very sort of non-porous. It's a different kind of composition that really doesn't absorb anything. It's almost like plastic. And so what I do is, this one is for raw meats. This one is for vegetables. I don't know if you can see my hand. This one's for vegetables and produce. This one's for raw meats. And what I do is I have this Clorox type product, bleach, and I'll bleach the heck out of this guy when I'm done. And any sort of knife that I use to cut the chicken or turkey or whatever it is, fish with, that all gets bleached and sanitized when I'm done with that process. This one never sees any raw meat. You know, this wooden one here never sees any raw meat. This is strictly vegetables and fruits, and that's it. We never cut anything else on here. I mean, you could cut bread as well, cut breads on here. So that's how I sort of do it in my kitchen. Whatever system works for you, but just always make sure these are separate, the raw and the fresh. This is a food thermometer, and I don't know if this will turn on or not. This one will show, I don't know if you can see it on the little screen's a little dirty here. I don't know how well this picks up, probably not real well, but so on the display, it'll say like beef. You can hit this button and it'll actually switch it to different. So this has veal, this has got poultry. It'll say 165 for poultry and so forth. So it actually has built into this thing, again, we have computers everywhere now. It knows what the temperature, what the safe temperature is for all the different meats. So get one of these. It's pretty cheap again. This has a little thing on the bottom that actually tells you the temperatures too. And all you got to do is, you know, if I have a roast or something, just poke it in there. It'll, you know, these numbers will run up, usually kind of tracks upward. And then when it hits, if you get to 165 or above for the internal temperature, it'll show that on here. You'll say, you know, 166 or whatever. And then an alarm goes off. It'll actually start beeping, say, okay, you're good. You've hit the proper temperature. So that's a really nice thing. I didn't used to have one of these. Used to have the old school one like this. And this one this actually shows you on the scale, you know, the different temperatures. Again, 165 for poultry. It's right on there. So you can always use these guys if you'd prefer. I usually go digital myself, but they'll, you know, either one will work. And let me pan back here a little ways. These are a couple of other things back here. This is one of many cookbooks I have. So I have a library of cookbooks. I don't cook out of every single cookbook I have. I mean, just like anybody, we've got cookbooks that probably never seen the light of day. This one gets used pretty heavily. I think I've cooked just about everything in this one. It's Better Homes and Gardens New Dieters Cookbook. This is kind of an older cookbook. It's from maybe 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, Better Homes and Gardens. They stopped the New Dieters series, unfortunately, but there's about 3 different editions of this. They're all really good, edited by dietitians. And I'll still mention them to patients because you can still get them on Amazon used. The good thing about something like this, I don't know if I can show you on the screen or not, but you know, a good cookbook for weight management or just for healthy cooking, you know, you're going to want to see the nutrition facts per serving kind of down here at the bottom. And if you look at it, it's always going to be, you know, your sodium's going to be, this one's 397 milligrams, pretty good sodium. You know, it's got some fiber in it. It's got protein, very little saturated fat, says 3 grams. So all those boxes are checked with these type of recipes, and you can see at a glance what you're dealing with, and it's really good, very, very helpful. Back here, this is American Heart Association. All of their materials, I don't know about all, but quite a few of their recipes are now online. So I don't know that anyone necessarily needs to go out and buy their cookbooks. I'm sure they have more in their cookbooks than what's online, but these are very good. They're very low salt. It's very, you know, even more low sodium than the other one. You know, particularly if you're on a very strict cardiac diet for blood pressure, and the doctor maybe wants you below 1,600 milligrams, which is pretty strict. Something like this would be really helpful to have. And these are a lot of good recipes. Again, very, very healthy. And I've used out of there many times as well. This is something I'll talk to my patients about. Now, this is a 2015 edition. I think actually the newer ones are bigger. It's kind of like more 8.5 by 11. This is the old school way of tracking calories before all the apps came along. If it's showing up in the camera very well. Let's see. There we go. So it has this guy with a little crown on his head. It's Calorie King. He's actually a dietitian. And I was using him long before I became a dietitian myself. And you go through here and it's just got your foods listed, very common foods. It's got restaurants in here. And it lists calories, fats, and carbs typically. Those are three things that it will list. But it's a very quick and easy way to kind of see how many calories you're getting. If you don't want to use the app or you're not comfortable using apps, the apps are really sort of replacing that though now, because the apps are so powerful and so much easier to use for most people. But some people still prefer that, and that's fine. I still keep them on hand myself, but I find that the app is really sort of taken over. So last but not least, for those of you still on the call here, it looks like we're dwindling down a little bit. So this is just a recipe holder that I use. So what I do is I've taken a lot of recipes out of like this cookbook here, other cookbooks, taken the ones that are my favorites. I put it into a binder like this, and I will sort of cycle back through those. I mean, they're just old favorites. I mean, I think every family probably has something like this. Again, for me, these are almost exclusively healthy items. I won't say they're all healthy because there are some comfort foods in that binder somewhere, but most of these things are things that are pretty healthy, balanced meals, and they're a quick resource for me because they're kind of vetted recipes. They're ones I know I like. And I can just flip through here. It's like, oh, I haven't had this in a while. Pull that up, make it, and I'm good. So that's pretty much it for tonight. Let me see if I can angle this around here. And if you guys have any questions, let's see here. Try to lower this down so you can see me more or less. Alrighty, so I appreciate you guys sticking it out. It's kind of a small group tonight, but do you guys have any questions for me? Questions, comments, anything like that, feel free. You can either text or you can unmute. Either way is fine. Okay, you are welcome. It says no questions, appreciate sharing. Yeah, I was hoping maybe for a little bit bigger group tonight. I'm not sure. I know when we first started doing these WebExes, I had about 30 people. And it looks like we're down to just a few tonight. But we're not doing as much advertising we used to do. We used to advertise more on Facebook. We've had some cost cutbacks with advertising. We're not reaching as many people. So that is what it is, unfortunately. We might be able to start kind of reaching out a little bit more again here in the future. I'm going to look into that, see if we have a little bit more budget for that. But yeah, I enjoy doing these. It's fun for me. It's good for me too to have to go through some of these materials. I use them with patients. These are talks that I can sort of either give again in the future or kind of pull things from them and share with people. So it's all good, and I'm glad I'm able to kind of help you guys. And again, if you have any questions down the line, you can always contact me. And just look, like I said, for that information. It should email out sometime, I think tonight, or maybe in the morning. I'm not sure when the email goes out, but all the handouts that kind of discuss some of this stuff should all be going out on email. So as far as announcements, I just say we're going to have another support group. And so that is going to be second week of October. And let me see if I can tell you what date that is. Look at my calendar here. So that would be October the 15th. It's actually, I guess, the third week technically. So October 15th is our next WebEx experience. So that's a support group. That's more or less more of a Q&A, less of me talking about a topic really. And then in about a month, October the 29th, will be my last class of the year. And that one's going to deal with kind of holiday survival guide. So it's going to talk about how do we kind of get through the holidays when we're doing weight management. We're concerned about our weight, and we don't want the holiday to really throw us off. So I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to actually make a meal. Of course, I can't share it with you, but I can share with you the preparation of the meal, and you can sort of see it here in the kitchen. So those are always kind of fun. So stay tuned. You should get those invites on the emails, and I hope to see some of you there. Alrighty, so I guess that's it for tonight. Hope you all have a great night, and look forward to seeing you again in a future meeting. So take care.